Good to see everyone back here at Grace Baptist Church. We're going to start with hymn 324. 324, we'll do all 4 verses. Draw me nearer. Here we go. I am thine, O Lord, I have heard thy voice, and it told thy love to me. But I long to rise in the arms of faith, and be closer drawn to thee. Draw me nearer, nearer, blessed Lord, to the cross where thou hast died. Draw me nearer, 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 blessed Lord, to thy precious bleeding side. Consecrate me now to thy service, Lord, by the power of grace divine. Let my soul look up with a steadfast hope, and my will be lost in thine. Draw me nearer, nearer, blessed Lord, to the cross where thou hast died. Draw me nearer, 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 blessed Lord, to thy precious bleeding side. Oh, the pure delight of a single hour that before thy throne I spend. When I kneel in prayer and with thee, my God, I commune as friend with friend. Draw me nearer, nearer, blessed Lord, to the cross where thou hast died. Draw me nearer, 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 blessed Lord, to thy precious bleeding side. There are depths of love that I cannot know till I cross the narrow sea. There are heights of joy that I may not reach till I rest in peace with thee. Draw me nearer, nearer, blessed Lord, to the cross where thou hast died. Draw me nearer, 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 blessed Lord, to thy precious bleeding side. All righty, well, let's go ahead and we'll pray. Our Heavenly Father, thank you for this time that we come again into your house and sing praises unto you and get another opportunity to look into your word, Lord, and again, thank you for that we're able to read it, Lord, without fear of being persecuted, Lord. And again, I do pray for the ones that aren't able to be here this evening. Just meet the needs there. Bless the remaining of the service, and may we honor and glorify you. And in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
All right. We haven't done this song in a while, so bear with us. We didn't come from monkeys, we didn't swing from trees. We're not a piece of seaweed that's blowing in the breeze.
Right.
It wasn't a big explosion that caused you and me. We know God created you and me. They sent some men up to the moon to find the secrets of life. They spent $4 billion, could have helped this world of strife. They didn't find the secrets in the moonstones that they found. They should have come to my town. We got rocks all over. She said it was a big explosion that caused you and me. But when my old truck backfired, I thought it created a family. Oh, we didn't come from monkeys. trees. It wasn't a piece of seaweed just blowing in the breeze. It wasn't a big explosion that caused you and me. We know God created you and me.
I stood beside a professor one day at the zoo. He said,
"Look at those monkeys, why they're related to me and you."
and he got a little irate when he said I didn't agree. But I have to admit, they look a lot more like him than me.
Oh, we didn't come from monkeys, we didn't swing from trees. We're not a piece of seaweed just blowing in the breeze. It wasn't a big explosion that caused you and me. We know God created you and me. Yes, we know God created you and me. Alrighty, now we can go to hymn 196. 196. We'll do all 5 verses. I will sing the wonder story. 196. Here we go. I will sing the wonder story of the Christ who died for me. Now he left his home in glory for the cross of Calvary. Yes, I'll sing the wonder story of the Christ who died for me. Sing it with the saints of glory gathered by the crystal sea. I was lost, but Jesus found me, found the sheep that went astray. Threw his loving arms around me, drew me back into his way. Yes, I'll sing the wonder story of the Christ who died for me. Sing it with the saints of glory gathered by the crystal sea. I was bruised, but Jesus healed me. Faint was I from many a fall. Sight was gone and fears possessed me, but he freed me from them all. Yes, I'll sing the wonder story of the Christ who died for me. Sing it with the saints of glory gathered by the crystal sea. Days of darkness still go o'er me, sorrow's wrath I often dread, but the Savior still is with me, by his hand I'm safely led. Sing the wonder story of the Christ who died for me. Sing it with the saints of glory gathered by the crystal sea. He will keep me till the river rolls its waters at my feet. Then he'll bear me safely over where the loved ones I shall meet. Yes, I'll sing the wonder story of the Christ who died for me. Sing it with the saints of glory gathered by the crystal sea. All right. Lastly, tricked you again. We're going to do 65. Hymn 65. We'll do all 4 verses just over in the glory land. Hymn 169. 169. After. We will do all 3 verses. Come thou fount. 169. Find my
Nathaniel. Good evening. Glad to see you all here. Those of you watching at home, you notice we had some technical difficulty. We're praying that that's resolved. And it even sounded like that we sang the third verse of Just Over in Glory Land twice, but technical difficulties, that's what happens. We mentioned on Facebook, those of you that are participating from home, if you would like us to bring our hymnals so you can actually sing while you're at home, just let us know and we'll make arrangements to do that. All right, please remember to pray one for another. Pray for the financial needs of the church so we can try to get the air conditioner replaced and so we can get back in the auditorium. All right. Brother Jim, I'm going to put you to work again tonight, sir, if you don't mind. We'll worship the Lord again with His tithe and our offering. Brother, if you could pray for the offering, please.
Dear Heavenly Father, Lord God, again, we thank you for this opportunity we have together in thy house again. We pray for those that are absent from us tonight, Lord, that you could be in illness or something, or medical, that you would heal it, bless them, and watch over them and keep them. We you bless this offering, that it be used to further the cause, to get the word out to the lost and dying.
Yes.
We do pray and ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Right, well, if you would take your Bible and go to Genesis chapter 50. Genesis chapter 50. I dropped my tablet. 50, 50, Genesis 50. And while you're turning there was a little boy who was outside with his friend, and they were eating a big bag of candy they had just gotten when an older gentleman walked by and seen the two little boys sitting there with the candy going to town on it. And the old man walked up to the boys and said, "Boys, you better slow down on that candy. You're going to ruin your teeth, ruin your supper." And the one little boy looked at the old man and he said, "You know, my grandpa lived to be 107 years old." And the old man was like, "Wow, that is some feat, 107. How did he do that? Did he do it by eating candy?" And the little boy looked at him and said, "Nope, he did it by minding his own business." So let there be a lesson. Let little kids and candy be. Genesis chapter 50. And we will start reading in verse 15. "And when Joseph's brethren saw that their father was dead, they said, Joseph will peradventure hate us, and will certainly requite us all evil which we did unto him. And they sent a messenger unto Joseph, saying, Thy father did command before he died, saying, So shall ye say unto Joseph, Forgive, I pray thee now, the trespasses of thy brethren, and their sin, for they did unto thee evil. And now we pray thee, forgive the trespasses of the servants of the God of thy father. And Joseph wept when they spake unto him. And his brethren also went and fell down before his face. And they said, Behold, we be thy servants. And Joseph said unto them, Fear not, for am I in the place of God. But as for you, ye thought evil against me, but God meant it unto good, to bring to pass as it is this day, to save much people alive. Now therefore fear ye not, I will nourish you and your little ones, and be comforted, and comfort them. And he spake kindly unto them. So tonight I want to talk about, as Joseph points it out there in verse 20, but God meant it unto good. You know, Joseph is one of two people I say, if anything, had a right to complain. The other person I say had a right to complain being Job. Job had it all. You know, Job had a good life, lived a good life, was one man that God considered perfect, and then had it all taken away from him. You know, lost his wealth, lost his cattle, lost his family, you know, lost everything he had, or lost his health. But through it all, Job said, you know, the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. And Job didn't complain at all. And then you have Joseph. And Joseph is kind of in the same boat. Joseph really didn't do anything wrong. Joseph was a good guy, seemed to be a good guy, you know, but he didn't have things go his way, if you want to put it that way. You know, he seemed to draw the short straw all the time. You know, but through Joseph's life, the first thing we see, you know, as in God, what God meant for good, bad things happen to good people. You know, in the Bible, in Matthew, I believe it is, Jesus said that it rains on the just and the unjust.
Right.
You know, just because you're a servant of the Lord, or you're serving the Lord or following God, doesn't mean bad things won't happen to you. You know, the Bible, you know, I find it kind of funny, is you know, because the Lord, Paul told Timothy, you know, that if, you know, yea, all who live godly shall suffer persecution. You know. He said, you know, you live godly, you will suffer persecution. You know, hard times are going to come. You know, and the reason I find it funny is because, you know, that's not a verse that we advertise to everyone when we're witnessing.
Yeah.
You know, we don't use that verse to say, hey, you want to get saved, that's great, but just so you know, you get saved, a disclaimer, you will suffer hard times, because God said it right here. We don't use that verse, but it's not that it's going to happen because it's meant to be bad and evil, you know. It happens, good things happen to bad people. Good things happen to bad people and bad things happen to good people. That's where I was going. I confused myself. You know, but Joseph was a a great person of character when it came to his. You know, look at Genesis chapter 39. Genesis 39. And if I seem nervous, I apologize, but the people that are watching me that I can't see, I don't know how they're mocking me or not, so I'm trying not to be judged.
They're making faces.
I know it.
Oh, they're mocking you. Just
I know it.
rest
And the
assured.
bad thing is, I can't see y'all mocking me. Genesis chapter 39. Genesis 39. And we'll start reading in verse 1. And Joseph was brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard of the Egyptian, bought him of the hands of the Ishmaelites, which he had brought him down thither. And the Lord was with Joseph, and he was a prosperous man, and he in the house of his master the Egyptian. And his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made all that he did to prosper in his hand. And Joseph found grace in his sight, and served him, and he made him an overseer over his house, and all that he had he put in his hand. And it came to pass from time that he made him overseer of his house, and all that he had, that the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. And the blessings of the Lord was upon all that he had in his house and in the field. And he left all that he had in Joseph's hand, and he knew not aught he had save the bread which he did eat. And Joseph was a goodly person and well favored. So Joseph, at this point had been sold by his own brothers into slavery, because his brothers, they hated Joseph. Joseph had gotten the reputation of being his father's favorite. He was his father's favorite because he was from his favorite wife. Joseph's father had 2 wives, and Joseph was the son of his favorite wife. And, Joseph was treated a little different by his dad. Joseph was given a coat of colors, where his brothers basically had a simple coat. His father said, this is my favorite son. And he, put the coat on Joseph, and his brothers began to hate him. And not only for that reason, but because Joseph would tell them about the dreams he had. And he told them, I had a dream where we were all out in the field, and your guys' hay, bowed down to me, and I rose up, and they didn't like what they were hearing. They didn't like the fact that their youngest brother, was saying, I'm going to be over you. Being an older brother, I wouldn't like that either. If my older brother came to me and said, hey, I'm going to be over you. The little bit of sibling rivalry there, just would get it going, and I would have to prove or assert myself as the dominant brother, be like, no, you keep your place. But Joseph's brothers got to a point where they hated him so much that they said, you know what, we need to kill Joseph. We just straight up kill him. And I'll be honest, I've been mad at my brother, but I've never gotten to the point where I sat in my room and I contemplated, how can I kill my brother? I never got that mad. I never got upset at my brother. But they said, listen, we have to kill him and do away with him. We can't stand him. And the oldest brother said, no, let's get a little bit better out of this. Let's sell him. We'll make some money off of him. And so that's what they did. They lured him into a pit. They sold him off to some Ishmaelites, and then took his coat of many colors and dipped it in the blood of a lamb and brought it back to their father and said, Joseph was killed. This is how mad and how devious and how angry they were, because they brought his coat back to their father. Their father, who is I don't know how old he is at the time, but he's a much older gentleman, and they said, your son is dead. They all were in on a bold-faced lie to their dad and said, he's dead, he's gone. And they, day after day after day, kept that lie and watched their dad suffer. They watched their dad in pain and in agony, all for a couple pieces of silver, that just to reward themselves. But Joseph, throughout this all, has not complained one bit. Has not said, God, why me? Why is this happening to me? You're the one who gave me the dreams, God. I just told them what you showed me. It's not my fault Dad liked me better than them, God. I didn't do anything. Joseph didn't do anything like that. I wonder if in the back of his mind he was like, well, I wonder what God's got through this. I wonder, I may not understand why I'm being sold. I don't know why they hate me so much, but Lord, I'm trusting you throughout this all. And Joseph was taken to the slave market and bought by Potiphar, who was the head of the prison. And Potiphar took him home and put Joseph in control of everything he had. And Joseph was God's hand was on Joseph and was blessed that Potiphar, was happy with what Joseph was doing, because he got to the point where this may be a slave, but if I want to leave the house, I don't have to worry about this guy taking anything from me. I don't have to worry about him stealing my money. I don't have to worry about him trying to steal anything from me. He's such a good person, and he put him in charge over the house. So he was an honest man. Secondly, along with Joseph's character, he had a sense of moral character. Look at verse 7. And Genesis 39 still, verse 7. And it came to pass after these things that his master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph, and she said, Lie with me. But he refused, and said unto his master's wife, Behold, my master wotteth not what is with me in his house, and hath committed all that he hath to my hand. There is none greater in the house than I, neither hath he kept back anything from me but thee, because thou art his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? And it came to pass, as she spake to Joseph day by day, that he hearkened not to her to lie with her or to be with her. And it came to pass about this time that Joseph went into the house to do his business, and there was none of the men of the house there within. And she caught him by his garment, saying, Lie with me. And he left his garment in her hand and fled and got out. And it came to pass, when she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and fled forth, she called unto the men of her house and spake unto them, saying, See how he hath brought an Hebrew to mock us. He came in unto me to lie with me, and I cried with a loud voice. So Joseph had great moral character, because Potiphar's wife came and she seen Joseph and said, I want you to come and be with me. And Joseph was like, whoa, we're time out here, freeze. I am basically the head of the house outside of my master. I can do anything I want in this house. But there's no way I can be with you. You're not my wife, but you're my master's wife. And yeah. I love how he puts it at the end of verse 9. He says, How can I do this great wickedness and sin against God?
Amen.
He knew God was watching.
That's right.
And that's, something sometimes I forget. I forget that God is watching me when I start to act a fool and start to act up at times. I forget that I am being watched. Not just by people, but that God is there with me. And Joseph knew that. Joseph knew that, hey, listen, it doesn't matter that there's no one here. God sees what's going to happen, and I can't do this in the sight of God. And it didn't change the fact that he said, I can't do this because God's watching. She came to him day after day after day after day. I imagine she got creative with it, trying to deceive Joseph and trick Joseph to get him to be with her. And it come down to one day where Joseph was just going about his normal day, and no one was in the house, and she grabbed him and said, listen, man, I can't stand it anymore. You will be with me. And Joseph basically left his shirt, his clothes, everything that he was with, and took off, said no, and ran. Maybe a dishonest person, maybe they would have said, you know what? You're right, no one's around. But Joseph was like, I can't do this. And Joseph didn't say, listen, give me my shirt and stuff. No, Joseph just left what was there and ran. And that should be us. When sin comes to us, we should just drop what we're doing and get away from it. Get away from sin and run from sin and not want to be there near that thing. And Joseph ran. And throughout all his good, everything that Joseph had done, he's been honest with his master Potiphar. Potiphar has seen his character. But Potiphar, I don't want to say that I wouldn't believe my wife, but I would say I would be very conflicted on who I should believe. Not that I wouldn't believe Vanessa if she said, hey, this happened, but I haven't seen this dude do anything up to this point. I would be conflicted. And I imagine Potiphar was, because if you look at verse 15, it says, And it came to pass, when he heard it, that I lifted up my voice and cried, that he left his garment with me and fled and got out. And she laid up his garment by her, and unto his Lord came home. And she spake unto him according to these words, saying, The Hebrew servant which thou hast brought unto us came in to me to mock me. And it came to pass, as I lifted up my voice and cried, that he left his garment with me and fled out. And it came to pass, when his master heard the words of his wife, when she spake unto him, saying, After this manner did thy servant to me, that his wrath was kindled. And Joseph's master took him and put him in the prison, a place where the king's prisoners were bound, and he was there in the prison. Potiphar, maybe he was upset, maybe he was confused, but it didn't matter. Someone tried to hurt his wife. And Potiphar could have had Joseph killed right there, because by all means it was a death act. It was a breaking the law, and Potiphar could have had him killed. But Potiphar just had him thrown in prison. And even in prison, Joseph didn't go, God, I didn't do anything. She did it. It's all her fault. Why is this happening to me? Joseph just continued to roll with the punches. And even in the prison, if you were to read verses 22 and 23, you would see that the captain of the prison said, you know what, this is a pretty good guy, even though I know what he did, but he's still a pretty good guy. And the head of the prison put Joseph in charge. See, Joseph, throughout it all, continued to show God to everyone he came in touch with. Continued to let God show through him. And even though, Joseph was going down, or had, again, the deck was stacked against him, Joseph didn't let that stop him. He still continued to let God show through, even though bad things happened to him. Joseph didn't care, And again, his brothers wanted him dead. His master's wife, tried to take him to lie with him, and he ran from her. And he, worst of all, is forgotten in prison. Joseph, the butler, the Pharaoh's butler, and the baker were thrown in prison. They were thrown in prison. We don't know why they were in prison. Being the head butler, it could have been something. He messed up on something, or maybe the baker didn't make. Maybe Pharaoh wanted a cherry pie, and that day he gave him apple pie. And Pharaoh just having a bad day said, you know what, throw him in jail. I don't know what it was, but the baker and the butler are there, and they see this guy who's, something different about him, obviously. The head of the prison likes him. He's not like us. He doesn't sit around and hang out with us when we're telling, the stories and whatnot. There's something different about this guy. And the butler and the baker each have a dream, and it begins to trouble them. They don't understand it. And, and Joseph tells them, well, my God has given me the ability to interpret dreams. And they both tell Joseph their dream. And the baker comes and says, I had a dream where I was carrying loaves of bread, and I dropped the bread, and the ravens came and they ate the bread. Joseph says, well, the bread represents 3 days, and in 3 days, Pharaoh's going to take you out and hang you. And the butler tells him his, and the butler says, I brought the cup to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh drank it. And Joseph tells him, well, Pharaoh, in 3 days also, Pharaoh is going to restore you your job. And I can imagine, being the butler, the little bit of excitement he had, hey, I'm going to get my job back. And then there's the baker who possibly reacted bad and said, nah, man, you're lying. Don't listen to this guy. I'm going to die. No, I ain't going to be hung for my... maybe the butler, the baker went into denial. But as Joseph told them both, 3 days passed, and the butler was given back his job, and the baker was hanged for what he did. And Joseph, before the butler left, said, hey, tell Pharaoh about me. Tell Pharaoh about me. Don't leave me sitting here in this prison, man. Tell Pharaoh what I told you and how you got your job back. Let's get me out of here. And the baker, not only did the butler forget, but he forgot for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Joseph, for 2.5 years, sat in a prison. And it's not like a prison like today where he's got, weights and TV and 3 meals a day. Joseph is in basically a pit in the earth.
Yeah.
That, it's a pit, and he gets fed when they bring him food. And if they remember to bring him food. He's in this pit for 2.5 years. Day and night, in and out. And Joseph, not one bit you read where Joseph said, God, I even told him not to forget me, and here I am forgotten. You know, God, not to remind you, God, but I'm going to remind you, I didn't do anything to my brothers to make them hate me, and they sold me, and they tried to kill, the Potiphar's wife, tried to act immorally with me, and I didn't do anything there, and I'm here, and God, I don't deserve any of this. I've been faithful to you, God, throughout this all. I don't deserve to be here. But Joseph didn't do any of that. You see, bad things happen for a reason. And it's not always because you did something wrong and God is punishing you. Sometimes it's bad things happen to you that others may learn. And that's...
Amen.
When I heard that the first time, I was like, that doesn't sound fair to me. I haven't done anything wrong. Why do I have to suffer? Why do I have to go through trials? Why do I have to be discomforted all that someone else may learn? That doesn't seem fair.
Yeah.
But that's how it happens. Because God knows you can handle being discomforted. God knows, hey, you're going to go through this, you're going to come out, and it's going to help this person. And again, it may not sound fair, you may not like it, but it's going to help. Go back to Genesis 50. Genesis chapter 50. Genesis 50, verse 19. And Joseph said unto them, Fear not, for I am in the place of God. But as for you, ye thought evil against me, but God meant it unto good, to bring to pass, as it is this day, to save much people alive. You see, Joseph, while he was, during his time there in the prison, Pharaoh began to have dreams. And they began to haunt Pharaoh and to plague Pharaoh. And Pharaoh brought all of his magicians and his soothsayers and anyone that, could interpret dreams. Pharaoh brought them in and said, Listen, guys, I need you to tell me about these dreams. They bother me. And Pharaoh tells the dream to his men, and none of them can interpret it. Now, these are the men that Pharaoh has relied on to advise him, tell him how to help do things in the kingdom. And they all of a sudden are like, Pharaoh, I got nothing for you. I can't tell you this dream. They should have set Pharaoh off right there, saying these guys were liars from the beginning. But the butler hears about this and says, Oh yeah, I had a cellmate. I wonder if he's still there. Because the butler doesn't know if Joseph died in prison or if Joseph's been executed or what. But he goes, Hey, Pharaoh, I used to room with a guy about 2 years ago. When you put, you laugh, I laugh, I was in prison, just to not remind you, oh great Pharaoh. But when I had, I had my short stay in prison, there was a guy there in prison with me that said, Hey, same thing, Pharaoh. I had a dream, and he told me the dream, and he told me I was going to get my job back, and here I am. And so Pharaoh said, Bring me this man. And he's brought before Pharaoh, and Pharaoh tells him his dream. And Joseph says, Your dream represents, Pharaoh tells him, I see 7 fat calves. Then all of a sudden they're eaten by seven sickly and weak calves, and they don't get any fatter. And then he tells him, I also have another dream where there's 7 golden grains of wheat, and they're devoured by 7 sickly grains of wheat. Distracted, sorry. and they're gone, and they don't look any better. And Joseph tells them, hey, it represents there's going to be 7 good years, and then there's going to be 7 bad years. And when the 7 bad years come, it's going to be like nothing we've ever seen. And he tells Pharaoh how to save his people. He tells them to store stuff up throughout the 7 good years. That way when the 7 bad years come, you'll make it through this thing. And Pharaoh promotes Joseph to second in control. Joseph goes from being a slave and a prisoner with a record to having that all washed away to being second in control over the land of Egypt.
Amen.
And Joseph oversees making sure that the Egyptians put so much away that way they're saved during their bad time. And when the famine comes, Joseph is able to give them back of the grain they've stored up and of the things that they put away. And Joseph's brothers, all of a sudden, in the land of Canaan, the famine hits them. And they probably, I'm going to imagine, had forgotten about Joseph. Had gotten to the point where they were like, maybe it crossed their mind every now and then, but they were probably like, who knows what's going on with him right now. But the famine began to affect them, and they said, hey, Dad, listen, in Egypt they've got food, and we can go get food and we can make it through. So they go down there to Egypt, and when they get there, Joseph sees them and he says, those are my brothers. I wonder, part of me thinks Joseph had mixed emotions.
Yeah.
Hey, it's part of me was like, he wants to run up and be like, hey guys, it's me. And then there's that part of him that's like, they're
There we go.
yeah, you guys got all the nerve to come here. And I don't think he began to question God then at any point, but the human side of him came out for a minute, and he was probably like, how do I get even with them? I have the power to do anything I want to them, but he doesn't use that power to harm them.
Right.
He gives them food, and he tells them to come back, and they come back, and they get more food. And while they're there, Joseph, slips his cup into one of their bags and says, you know what, I'm gonna see how good these guys have gotten, if they've changed anything. And he slips his cup into the youngest boy's bag. And they start to leave, and as they come back, as they go to leave, they're surrounded by the Egyptian guards, and they say, one of you is taken from, they don't say his name is Joseph, but they say, they've taken from the second in command of Egypt. You've stolen from him, and they're all like confused, like, whoa, I don't know what you're talking about. And Joseph begins to tell them what they were doing. That he said, I gave you food, I gave you supplies that were meant for my people here in Egypt. I gave it to you, that way you could survive, and you repaid me by stealing from me. And Joseph finds his cup, and where he had planted it, and says, I'm going to take him prisoner. And all of a sudden his brothers are like, whoa, no, take me instead. Let him go. He's our father's youngest, and our father will literally die if he does not come back. Let me take his place. And Joseph reveals himself to his brothers and says, guys, it's me. I'm here. And I can imagine they were like, what? I imagine they thought he had died at some point.
Yeah.
Or that who knew where they thought he had lined up. I don't think they ever imagined seeing Joseph again in their life.
Mm-mm.
And Joseph goes, guys, it's me. How's Dad doing? How's everyone doing? Bring everyone and come here, and you can live with us and survive. And they do. They move down to Egypt, and Joseph gets to see his father, and is with his father, and when his father passes, and after his dad dies, his brothers are like, now Joseph's really going to get at us. He was kind to us because Dad was still alive. Now Dad's dead, and he's gonna kick us out, tell us to fend for our own, and this thing doesn't show any signs of quitting, this famine. And Joseph says, they began to complete their case before him. And as we read there in verse 19, Joseph says, fear not, for I am in the place of God. Am I in the place of God? Thank you. Joseph says, guys, I'm right where I need to be. You don't have anything to worry about. Even though you guys sought to harm me, sought evil against me, God meant it all for good.
Amen.
Even though you wanted to see me suffer, God said, I have a bigger plan.
That's right.
And God has kept me safe. God has provided for me. God has watched over me and put me in a place to where I can save the lives of others. And that's, my mind, reading that, it's like, that's great. But when it comes into affecting me, when someone says, I'm going through this, and I seen you go through it, and you're a help to me, it encourages me to know that, hey, God used my trial to help someone. It's there to be a blessing to others, to be an encouragement to others, to let them know, hey, it may be rough, but you know what? You can make it through. It wasn't, again, God did not intend did not say, Joseph, I don't like you. That's why I'm punishing you. That's why no, God said, Joseph, you don't see my plan right now. I have something big planned. And Joseph, I just need you to be willing to obey. And that's what we have to do, you know. One last place we're going to turn, Romans chapter 8, familiar verse, Romans chapter 8. Romans 8. Romans 8, verse 28. And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are called according to his purpose. For whom he did foreknow, he did also predestine to be comforted to be conformed to the image of his Son, that he might bear the firstborn among many brethren. But verse 28, you know, all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. It is, you know, everything we go through, as weird as this may sound, no matter if it's good or bad, it's meant to do God good. It's going to bring God good. It's going to uplift God. It's going to show God mighty. You know, and back in November when we broke down, you know, if looking at it now, looking back, you know, I see how God used it to strengthen my faith in him, and to teach me that, you know what, I can't always, not everyone's going to be there to help me, that I see that I need help from, that I trust, that can help me. You know, God put me in a place where he was like, listen, there's literally no one who can help you. I'm the only one who can. And God did exactly that. At the time, sitting at the truck stop in Kentucky, at the side of the road, it's like, I don't see how we're getting home. I did, you know, all the worst of the worst came to my mind. We're not going to get home. We're not going to get to see anyone. We're going to be stuck here for who knows how long. You know, my brain panicked. But then I was comforted knowing, you know what? God's in control.
Amen.
And God, and I seen that God was in control, began to see God was in control when Vanessa made the suggestion, let's put the hood up. Maybe someone will stop and ask for help, see if we need help. To me, it sounded like a dumb idea. I'll be honest, it did. But you know what? I was like, okay, let's do it. Let's put the hood up. And that's exactly what happened. Someone stopped and said, hey, you guys having mechanic problems, you know, mechanical issues? And it's like, we are. And you know, they told us, they're like, well, we're not mechanics, but we can buy you lunch.
Amen.
You know, have you guys eaten? No, well, we're going over here to eat. Why don't you guys come join us? We'll buy you lunch.
Praise the Lord.
You know, and not only that, they were like, I don't know if you guys got any, you know, when they found out we were from out of state, they're like, well, we'll put you up in a hotel. We'll put you someplace to sleep for the night.
Amen.
You know, and to watch God just all of a sudden just start to work in a way that I can only explain is it's God. And then to start, you know, getting phone calls saying, hey, there's this person that wants to help. You know, the Lord has given us someone else to help. They're going to come and get you guys. They're going to pick you up. They're going to come all the way to get you guys and bring you back home. You know, and then there was another one that God sent and said, hey, I want you to finish your trip. I want you to be able to go and see people, see your family. I'm going to give you the money to get a rental car for as long as you need it.
Amen.
I mean, I can't explain. I can't explain it, but it's God. And as the situation didn't seem good, I see no good out of it, but I see God working through it all, and it's good.
That's right.
And I can look back on that now, and I can tell others, listen, you may not be stuck on the side of the road in a small little town in Kentucky that probably no one's heard about unless you're from that area, but have faith in God and He will help.
Amen.
He will take care of you. Because every time I'm reading through my Bible now, and I read where the Bible, you know, especially, you know, where if I read where in Hebrews where I was reading where it said, where God said, I will never leave me nor forsake me, I have written beside that verse the dates we were in Kentucky. Because I was reminded right there that God was with me.
Amen.
In Malachi, where the Bible says that Jesus, where God said, I am the Lord God, I change not. I can look at that verse and see how I see how He provided throughout the Bible to everyone, and see how He provided for me. and I see that He hasn't changed one bit. He's still God. I just have to let Him be God.
Amen.
I have to take myself out of the way and let Him be God. So
Amen.
we will conclude with that tonight. For those of you who are watching, we will be, again, streaming services. If you're not able to make it here Wednesday night at 7, we will also have our services streaming then. So we will pray and then be dismissed. Our Heavenly Father, thank you for the day you've given us, Lord. Just thank you for the example we see in Joseph and how you, even though the situation may not seem good, you're always in control and you're there. Father, I just ask that you help us to lean on you and to have faith on you in any situation we come to. I just ask now that you remind us of your presence as we go about our separate ways and bring us back safely next time. These things we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.